Hey, welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. I've got a great guest for you again tonight. His name's Daniel Duffield. Welcome, Daniel.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
So Daniel is an architect, and he's also a property investor, and he's CEO of KOVE properties, which are in the Northeast. Is that right, Daniel?
Yeah, Northeast based.
So whereabouts are you based?
So we're based in Newcastle, but we cover Northumberland all the way to Darlington.
Yeah. So we're going to have a chat tonight really about one of my favorite subjects, and also Daniel's favorite subjects as well, which is really how connection can make a property business really powerful and actually help you build wealth, because that's obviously what property is all about. So we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the three principles of connection, which are connection to self, connection to others, and connection to many. So as many of my regular listeners and viewers will know, connection to many is all about the marketing. So we're going to get into that as well. But first of all, we're going to talk about the two other pillars of connection, which are connection to self and connection to others. So let's start off, Daniel, if that's okay, just talking about connection to self and how you make sure that, you know, your mind is in the best possible shape in order to go out there and absolutely smash it in your property business. Do you have any particular habits, practices, maybe reading materials or podcasts or anything that you like to do and incorporate into your life on a regular basis that helps you go out there as the strongest and the best and the most empowered version of yourself?
Yeah. So we talked about, me and business partner talked about this, about how we should do this more. But my business partner went to a retreat this weekend, like a well-being retreat, and he said it was absolutely fantastic. And he's come to work feeling, beaming with light and really energetic. And it's stuff like that is really, really important. Just to recharge and just step back and reflect and look back. I like to go on walks and I like to exercise and go to the gym. And I was saying this to my business partner, a lot of the really creative ideas, the really innovative processes and things that really excel our business are when we detach ourselves from our business, when we're actually not thinking or not in the business, doing the work, where it's very busy and you don't even have time to think sometimes. When we detach like that and have that perspective, not only is it good for well-being, because it allows us to step back and reflect and see how fast we're progressing and give us time to appreciate it, but also I think as well it energizes you and gives you that perspective to come up with good ideas and think outside the box sometimes as well.
Yeah, I think it's something that so many early stage entrepreneurs don't do, and it's really, really easy to sacrifice your well-being and actually put that investment into yourself on hold. But it isn't a good idea, is it?
No, definitely not. And it's one of those things. It's thinking like a business. So like everything is an investment. You've got to spend money to get money. You've got to spend time on things to get results. And if you're working constantly and burning yourself out, and I've done it myself. I'm definitely not saying I'm a saint, but I've had times where I've worked and I've felt like I had to work really, really long hours, 6-7 days a week, and then I've let it out on not just my business partner, but I've been a bit snappy to staff. And it's just unacceptable, and it kind of it's infectious. It seeps into other people, and I particularly want KOVE to be a place that a place to excel, but a place to want to go to work and feel comfortable and really like the ethos and the culture. And you can't do that if you're stressed and you're not detaching yourselves and re-energizing and looking after yourself, essentially.
Yeah, it is really, really critical. So that's a message out there to everybody: is invest in yourself, take care of yourself, and you will be a stronger and a better person in your business. Yeah, so let's get on to the connection to others pillar. So talking about interpersonal relationships, which is obviously one of my favorite topics. So you've got a business partner, Daniel. How did the two of you meet?
This is a really good story, actually, and it just shows you the power of connections and people and social media, actually. So I'm part of a group, which I know that you're in, on Facebook, and it's a property group. And I saw a post from Jez, that's my business partner now. He said, "Hi guys, I'm basically looking to invest in the Northeast, particularly Newcastle. New to the area, looking for recommendations on where to invest." So I just thought, why not reach out? I was in my architect's practice at the time, and reached out and said, I'll happily meet up with you, and we'll have a couple of beers, and I'll tell you where I would invest. And honestly, and I swear to this, I didn't have an interior motive. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, just give some value, build my network, show my worth a little bit, and you never know, I might be able to create some friends in property. We met up at the pub. I told him literally everything that I knew about where I think's a good area and why, my reasons why. And he was like, "Well, do you want to help me find a property for a fee?" And that's how it started. So I was kind of like, okay, I'll think about this. And we kind of started working together and meeting up more. And he kept coming down and doing viewings, and I was, meeting him. We'll go into the coffee shops and chatting, and we kind of the relationship materialized into the fact that we knew each other at that point, where I knew he had skills that I didn't have, and he knew I had skills that I didn't have. So basically his kind of skills are, he's worked in project planning, he's worked for some big charities, and he's very, very analytical, organized, structured, and I'm very creative. I'm very good with sales and marketing and creating stories and coming up with ideas. And I'm not necessarily, sometimes I don't finish them, but I start them. And I'm not necessarily the most organized either. So, funnily enough, we've recently done a wealth dynamics test.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a creator, and Jez is a mechanic, which is the same as Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. I'm not saying that I'm the same as them at all. But, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, opposites seem to work sometimes, and together, with the analytics, the kind of structure and the creativity and the sales, that breeds a very good combination of skill sets for property. So we seem to work really well together. We've never had an argument really. We have debates and discussions, but we've never fallen out. But anyway, digressing a little bit. So that's how I met my business partner, and it was just from giving value, and it was just from meeting someone, putting myself out there, and the relationship materialized, and now we're in business together. It's quite crazy, actually.
Amazing. And I think you raise a really important point, because I have seen this over the years, that people that have complementary skill sets usually make very harmonious business partnerships. They have to have a values match. They have to be the same kind of people. And when I say that, I mean that I think that they have to kind of prioritize certain things. There has to be a sort of honesty and integrity, and an attitude of sort of win-win and giving, and all of that, like any good relationship. But it is those kind of complementary opposites that really make a business strong. Absolutely. And when people are too much the same, and I remember when I worked in my brand identity agency, before I was made MD and before one of the partners ran off, the biggest source of conflict between the two of them, and you'll resonate with this with your architectural background, is that they were both creatives. And so a piece of work would come in, and they would both want to do it if it was a good piece of work, and they ended up really falling out over it. Whereas if one of them had been a creative and another one had been a more analytical, business orientated person, they probably would have, the business would have been a lot more successful than it was when I actually stepped in to join it. So Good point. Yeah, really good. And that wealth dynamics test is it's a good one, isn't it?
It is. It is. We do it with all our staff now.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So you have a lettings agency as well, don't you, Daniel? So it's not just you and your business partner. You are managing a team of people, and not just lettings agents. You've got project managers, you've got builders, the whole lot. Property is a team business, isn't it? Team industry.
Yeah. So we've got a sales team. So we find properties for investors. So we've got quite a big sales team. We've got someone just hired on full-time on marketing. Mm-hmm. We've got an admin assistant helping out with everything. We've got 2 project managers, a viewer who does all the viewings for the properties, and now we've got a lettings manager, and we're going to hire someone else on lettings as well. So there's 10 of us so far, looking to get our 11th fairly soon. So quite a big team.
Yeah. So how have you found that team building process, Daniel? Has it been hard or has it been easy? What aspects have you found rewarding? What aspects challenging? Yeah.
So I think being a manager and managing people is difficult. Most of the difficulties are usually with me because, and this is the thing, it's when something goes wrong or when someone does something that's different to what you want, it's usually down to you. It's usually down to communication, right? It's never the employee's fault. It's always the employer's fault for not giving us the guidance and not clearly explaining something or not giving enough training. And that's what I've realized, the difficulties are more on me really, because I'm not, at the beginning, I didn't really know how to manage, and I would now, we give such an in-depth training to our staff, and we give so much time and effort into the processes and the systems to improve them as people, but also the business as well. And I think that's an often thing that's, quite overlooked sometimes. And I think having trust and we do lots of things to build well-being in the company and morale. So we just did. We have a monthly meeting. So we discuss the wins. We discuss, the negative things that happened that month as well. We talk about any new key updates, and we did recently a values session. So everyone has to put down what the values mean. So we've got 5 core values and what they mean. And then it was like a sticky note on Google. So everyone just kind of jumps in and says what it means. Someone put "own your shit" on one, which I thought was quite funny. Owning it and like taking responsibility of that role and really giving it some. And yeah, it was just really, really engaging to get people together. And then it's like, what does our core values mean? So what does it mean to KOVE, and what does it mean for them as well as on a personal level, like putting experiences at work and bringing them core values into that as well. And it was a really good team building exercise to kind of see everyone else's opinions on what they thought of our core values and what they thought of our company as well. And that was really good. And I think, providing that platform, it brings people together. We also have individual meetings in each of the sectors of the business as well, just giving people ownership and letting them run the meetings. Stuff like that. I like over time, it's kind of, we're building more and more into a real company. And it's just nice to see, and it's nice to see people take ownership and start working autonomously. And we're actually at the moment working remotely because COVID. And normal kind of practices, you're in an office and you've got your boss looking over the shoulder. We've got a different kind of way of looking at it. As long as the work's done, and we're not bothered. We completely trust our staff. We don't micromanage. We empower our staff to lead on projects. So
yeah, that's amazing. I'd just like to touch on this whole issue of remote working, because I have a team and we've been working remotely as well. And I think there are some real advantages to working remotely, but there are also some challenges, aren't there? And have you found that any challenges have come up with you and your team as a result of this enforced way of working?
I think there's been difficult. Well, I think having that open office environment is good for collaboration and teaching people, because you subconsciously take in information and learn quite quickly.
Yeah.
So I think training wise, you have to train a lot more if you're working remotely, which we do. This is one of the things that we've realized at the beginning is we're not training enough. People are, grasping things and maybe getting things perfect because we're not training them enough, because it's different working remotely than it is working in an office. You can't just,
it really is.
Yeah, and you can't subconsciously just watch people and see how people do things and understand terminologies that quickly. So we have a whole training package for that now. Just the basics, the very basics, just to get your head around it and understand the property terminologies and the different systems and processes of auctions, of all the different things in property. So I think that's a challenge which we've tackled. But I think there's many positives to it as well. I think it really empowers people to live on their own terms, and that improves, like you say, well-being and improves productivity actually, and trusting staff in that way is such a good way to empower them, I think, as well. And I think you've got to get that balance right, but it seems to be working for us, definitely.
Yeah, and I have had the same experiences that sometimes I was actually having this conversation with one of my team the other day that sometimes I realized that there was a part that was missing that wouldn't have been missing if we were in the same environment, in that he is not hearing me on the phone to my clients. If he heard me on the phone to my clients, or maybe he heard some of the, the sales conversations or whatever, then he would really, it would be a missing piece of the jigsaw that he hasn't got. Yeah. And sometimes it's easy to forget that. And so that over communication, I think, it's something that has to go along with that autonomy and that kind of hands-free approach. It's something we're all learning. We're all working it out for ourselves, aren't we? But I definitely think that everything that you say resonates with my experience as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I think as well, it's changing. It's a different time to be in, but I think it's actually worked better for the business, to be honest. And I think it's allowing us to, we've got some VAs as well, working remotely, doing a lot of the admin stuff, which is working really, really well. And I think it's a great way to scale as well. I think it's going to change the landscape now of working. I think this is going to be more common, to be honest. Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's really any going back. Even my daughter, she's a marketing manager at Samsung. And before the lockdown, they would never work at home. They were either in the office or they were with their agencies. And now it has completely changed. And her boyfriend works for Sky. And it's the same thing. They're just, they've had a taste of, I think, both their businesses and them. They've had a taste of that freedom, really, of kind of working at home. So what she says is, I don't want to go back to Chertsey, which is where they were. I'd like to go into the West End and maybe kind of hang out at the agencies a couple of days a week. I don't understand why she'd like that more. But there's been a massive change, I think, in the whole culture of working life over the last year. And I think everybody's just feeling their way, but actually liking the new normal. Do you think that?
Yeah. As well, from a business perspective, you've got the question, is it worth the expense? I mean, I don't know if you want to. I mean, I think a lot of it's ego as well. Like, you want to look like you've got a nice business with a nice office. If you strip that back, what are the pros? Yes, you learn quicker in an office environment. There's also distractions. So there's what else? You I suppose you're all in one entity, so you can ask questions, and maybe remotely it's a bit more. You've got to wait. Maybe it's a bit of a blocker if you're messaging someone or waiting for a Zoom call. But I think you've got to weigh up the pros and cons. Is it worth £1,500 a month or whatever it is rent for an office? And is there ways that you can mitigate those problems? I think so. I don't think it's worth, just for those reasons. I mean, there's probably others, but just for the reasons that you stated, I don't think it's worth spending that amount on an office,
Well, no, and that's right. And I think it's more acceptable as well now because of COVID and because of lockdown. I think people accept the remote working. And I was actually talking today to somebody about, it's actually about a year and a half ago now. I actually hosted an event called the Pocket MBA in London at a hotel. It was very expensive, really expensive, because the hotel was expensive. And what I was saying is that once you've brought people to a hotel, of course, they stick it to you on all the teas and the coffees and the refreshments and all the rest of it. But otherwise, it's not such a good experience for your delegates. So, I sucked it up and I paid all the extortionate, unlimited tea and coffee charges. So my delegates could have a good time. But it's such a pressure, to have that, it's a couple of grand, really, to just for a weekend. To hire that hotel. And of course, then there's all the travel, and then there's the hotels and all of that. And, actually not having that and to be able to deliver trainings and do things like this online means that it's just a lot less pressurized, but you can still give that value. That's the thing that I like. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will just add as well, obviously, because we're not face to face, we try and we do a meetup every month with the staff. We take them out for food, and we're planning on changing that and going for walks and doing exercising and stuff like that, because I think as well as a negative, I suppose, for example, when a few months ago when we've only just set up the lettings agency, but for the first time our viewing agent met our lettings agent, and it's like, we've been running a few months, but they haven't met because they've never needed to connect. And it's a good way to get everyone together and build that culture, so we do meet up once a month. And that's so crucial to that relationship. But again, there's things you can do to mitigate that, which is what we're doing. So
yeah. So let's talk about this issue of interpersonal connection, emotional intelligence, all of those people skills, and how does it make you more successful as a property investor?
Yeah, I think relationships are absolutely crucial. I mean, we wouldn't get where we are today without relationships. Relationships with estate agents, so crucial to our business, creating, being that person who the estate agent can rely on, not pulling out of a property transaction. When they need you, you're there, and that's the key thing for us. Sales isn't necessarily about selling something to them. It's about facilitating a blocker for that person and creating a win-win. And that's what we try to do with agents. It's what we try to do with clients, investors. And this just shows how, how people can revolutionize a business, because we have, before, about 6 months ago, we didn't have a sales role. We used to have like a mailing list to send properties out. We didn't have time to build relationships with clients. And since we hired someone because I used to call agents, and I used to book in viewings, and I used to do all the admin stuff. Now I've got someone to do that. I'm spending my time on the higher income earning tasks. I'm spending my time ringing clients, building relationships, doing the higher strategic relationships with some of the directors of estate agents and stuff like that. So since I've kind of introduced that role to the business, we've doubled our sales because clients trust us. Honestly, and it's that little shift that's made such a big difference. It's like, why didn't we do this months ago? But it's a natural progression, I suppose. But it's like what we do now with our clients. We go, okay, what's your goals? Where do you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And then they'll say where they want to be. Then we'll reverse engineer it and go back to year one and say, well, did you know that, let's say 4 years time, I want to have 20 properties. Well, you need to have 5 properties this year. And they'll be like, oh, right. And it's like, do you know it's 6 months in, you've not done anything? So we act as a facilitator to them and accountability. And, some of them are just blocking in mindset. Some of them are like, I don't know why I'm hesitating. I don't know what's, and they say, well, what's the blocker? How can we help? And that's what sales is. And that's why it's a people business. It's just connecting with people and, being being very real person and just helping. It's helping people, isn't it? Essentially.
It is. Yeah. And I think giving value first, and, that's certainly my mantra as well. I always like to give value first. And a lot of people, they say to me, well, what do you get out of this? What do you get out of doing that? The podcast? Why do you do it? How do you monetize? Why have you got this Facebook group? What is it? Where do you get the money from? Why do you bother? And it's like, look, it's part of selling, part of marketing is the law of reciprocity. All of this stuff that you're talking about, all of the stuff that, I do in terms of actually doing something like this, it's giving value, it's making a difference to other people. And when you make a difference to other people, then they want to make a difference to you. And of course, there are always going to be some people who they'll take it and they'll walk off with it, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. But there will be others who they come back because you've created value for them, and then they come back to you and they want to create value for you in turn. Yeah. And those people are your people, right? That's how you find out.
Yeah, I mean, we had a client the other day that said, "Oh, I've been watching you for 6 months, and I just thought I'd reach out." And I think that was off the back of it because we've got a WhatsApp group, and we've got a networking event called the KOVE Property Meet, and that started in Newcastle. Then the lockdown hit, and we did a webinar, and we had speakers on, and then we created a WhatsApp group for that really, and we've got 150 people in there now, and because it's all over, it's not just Northeast based, and it's multiple touch points. They've been watching our content for a while. They've been attending the webinars, and then something had spurred a thought in the WhatsApp group, and they reached out after 6 months. And there'll be a lot of people that don't reach out, and that's fine. But we're building that culture. Like you were saying, and it's building that community. I've made so many friends from it on a personal level as well. There's so many benefits and advice. It's not just about clients. It's about, finding role models and finding friends and finding your power team. And it's all people related, finding the right broker to get you the right properties and on a mortgage, and finding the right architect to do your plans for your drawings. And it's all people related, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And I think trust is massive as well, because my observation in property, and, I've had a property business for many, many years now. It's a relatively small business, and I'm more of a connector. We talked about that earlier. But what I have noticed or observed, shall we say, is that the property sector, I think it attracts extremes. I think on the one hand, there's quite a lot of bad guys around. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There are people, because you could probably make as much money in a property development deal as you could dealing drugs. So people are. You do get some bad people who are attracted to it, and they look to launder money. They look to take investors' money and go and buy fancy cars and instead, and all of those kind of things. But then it's very black and white. Then I think you get the other type, And I think the other type are very, very ethical. And once you find your ethical people, they tend to stick together. And that's really when the magic happens. But I think property is very, very polarized in that respect. And that has been my experience. And I mean, maybe because I've been working more at the kind of higher end, you know, more with the bigger sums of money in London and the Southeast and things like that. So, I mean, obviously, as you get those bigger projects, then the bigger sharks do come to circle. But you definitely, there are some amazing people and some really ethical people who can just be trusted. And I think that is the whole thing that you need, isn't it? Because it's like a row of dominoes. If you get one bad apple, everything's going to fall down. But if you've got that really nice, tight team, then it works like a dream, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I don't understand why people think like that, you know, the bad apples, so to speak. But you know, because it's like, for example, I had a rant about this the other day. You know, we include everything in our fees. We always, you know, in terms of, we give a breakdown of what the costs are, and we include everything from mortgage payments to insurance to voids to maintenance. You know, we literally include everything. And I've heard horror stories of people that have bought properties from companies like ourselves, and they've missed out things, or they don't recommend a survey because a survey might come back with XYZ results that might put the vendor off, the client off, which then may ruin their sale. And they don't want that. So they say, well, we don't recommend surveys, honestly. And we always recommend a survey because it doesn't just protect the building from the client, but also the tenant. Because we see the tenant as a customer as well, you see.
Yeah, they're the end user, yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, that kind of mindset is like a 2-year mindset, not a 10-year or a 20-year mindset. It's like,
yeah,
you know, we've had properties as well that, you know, we've recommended a survey, and you know, you only get 15-minute viewing. So one particular property, the roof purlins had about 6 years left. Now it would have cost like £8,000 to replace. Now that's quite a lot of money in short amount of time. So you can't go into a roof and check that on a viewing sometimes, you know. So we always recommend a survey because it protects them. And that client went, look, it's too much money, and we said, yeah, we get it. They wouldn't, the vendors wouldn't. We couldn't renegotiate on the purchase price. The vendors wouldn't have any of it. The client wouldn't have any of it. So they pulled out, and that's fine. And that's protecting them. You know, that's those core values that you talk about. You know, the KOVE is all about the actual colours symbolize protection. And that's what we're kind of trying to do. Is we're trying to, that client is we're looking in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, not let's get a sale now. And if they don't use us again, that's fine. We'll find another client. It's that mindset, you know.
Yeah, as you said, it is the mindset of sustainable longevity, because you know, there are a lot of people who do it differently. And personally, I've had friends who've had some terrible kind of horror stories, and I think there is a very robust tradition, shall we say, of kind of northern crooks, semi-crooks, whatever, in property, thinking that they can just take the southern softies for a ride. So one friend that I had, he was actually invested up in the north, not so far from you, but he found out that the guy that he had invested with was basically letting out all of his houses to drug dealers. I mean, it was probably, he's probably in on it himself. Probably was, but anyway, so the first that this guy knew about it was when the police turned up and said, you are a drug dealer because all of your houses are they're all cannabis farms, and we found you, we've caught you now, because this was like the first he knew of it, because this guy had a lettings agent, but what he was doing is he was letting all those properties out because he thought that this guy was a long way away and he wouldn't come up there. So they were all cannabis farms. Can you believe it? And
crazy. I mean, we had an experience right at the beginning of our journey with a recommendation from a friend, not from someone in our circles. And we didn't do enough thorough due diligence. Mm-hmm. And this particular builder ripped us off, unfortunately. And it was one of our properties and two of our clients' properties. It was one client had two properties. And it was an absolute nightmare. And one thing that we did, and this is the thing, you know, again, longevity, we owned up to it and said, we messed up, you know, and that honesty and that just being completely front with them and telling them, yeah, we messed up. You know, we should have done more due diligence. We didn't. We're willing to pay for it. You know, we're willing to contribute. We're willing to do what it takes. These are the solutions. And that integrity and that kind of, you know, that transparency and really owning up to your mistakes and creating that solution. And, you know, not just worrying about, you know, we could have easily just gone, well, that client's gone, we'll just find another. You know, just like that person who doesn't recommend surveys. And it's like, you can't think like that. That's just the wrong way to think. And, you know, because of our actions and because of the way we dealt with that situation, that client still uses us today, still with us. And
well, there you go. Yeah. And there was another situation where somebody was selling HMOs. And again, it was a northern thing, you know, so selling these HMOs, because of course, down here in the southeast, a lot of investors, the yields aren't very good because everybody's relying on capital growth and the properties are very expensive. So a lot of people like to invest in the north if they don't have a lot of capital to begin with, because they invest for cash flow, don't they? So it's a very, very popular solution. But anyway, there was this guy who was selling these HMOs, and the HMOs were in let's just say, a part of town where people didn't want to live in HMOs. So, but they looked on paper, they looked good because they provided these comparables, you know what it's like up there. Sometimes it's one end of the street is going to be more expensive than the other, or just around the corner from the main road, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So you might do these comparables that are not true comparables. It just means that it's easy for you to, flog stuff at either, to Southerners that don't know any difference. Anyway, so this happened, and then the rooms, because it was an HMO, they were HMOs, they would never, ever be fully occupied. They would only be, at best, say 3 out of 5 or something like that. So as a result, most of the properties they weren't viable, and they ended up being put into auction, and the investors ended up losing money. And the guy that sold them, put them in that position, could you see him for dust? No, you couldn't. So as you said, your commitment to your investors, it's what everybody wants. Yes, they want the cash flow of those northern properties, but they want to work with somebody who's, genuine, decent person and committed to those values, really.
Absolutely.
That's good news.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's go on, Danielle, and talk about the connection to many, which is really the marketing. And I know that you're very passionate about this. And so what has your marketing journey been in the business, and how have you used marketing and that connection to many thing to make your business more successful?
Yeah, so I started actually joining the property groups. I dabbled in property. I'd done a couple here and there over the years. But it really started maybe about 3 years ago, when I started to post about my architecture and related it to property, and gave tips and value, like we were talking about before, all about value. And I started doing lives. Well, I started doing posts first, then and relating it to property and architecture and planning and things that maybe investors might find useful. Then I started to do videos. And then I started to do lives. So I built myself up to it. A live can be quite scary, because, like now, you can mess up, right? And it takes time, and, it does. It's practice, isn't it? And I used to really maximize my time. So I used to get, because I lived in the city centre, I used to get the bus in and I used to write content. I'd then do a live of the content that I'd written, a 1 minute video, like a real quick one, just before I walked in the building. And then sometimes when I left, I'd do a live. So I'd really, and I'd do that 7 days, well, 5 days a week and maybe a couple on a weekend as well. And I'd write all the content in my phone on my notes pad. And I started to build up some traction. It doesn't take overnight, it takes time. But over the space of a year, I had a little personal brand. You know, people knew me. I got asked to speak at an event to talk about permitted development, because I know quite a bit about permitted development and it's quite useful for investors. And I got asked to speak at an event through that. Crazy. And I got my boss lots of jobs at the time. I got him lots of business, and my boss was happy. I was really, really happy because I was meeting some really big investors that were doing some really cool stuff, and I was learning from them. And I was, you know, building my brand, building my self-awareness online. And that's when I realized, you know, everyone's unique. Everyone's got their own brand, and you are absolutely doing a disjustice to the world by not shining that personality out there, because there's no one else can do it but you. You know, and that's the thing that I realized. And when we started the business, I started to ramp it up even more. I mean, people that are in the property groups, or have got me on Facebook, they must be fed up with me because I'm everywhere. But it's just value. I'm just giving value as much as I can, and that's the thing that has allowed us to scale and get more exposure, get bigger clients, and it's just consistency, and it's relating, and it's being personable. It's not just going how to do this. It's being personal. It's talking about, like the time of the builder that I just talked about. I did that in a post, and I got about 150 comments, and I got about 10 people message me personally from that. And I got so much. People love the honesty. People don't do that. A lot of people think that it's all about showing you how amazing everything is, you know, but it's not. Everyone does that. Be honest. Talk about your mistakes, because mistakes are where the biggest learnings are. Saying how amazing your business is isn't going to give any value to anyone, but saying, okay, look, this happened. Please don't do this. People really, they go, wow, that's took some good courage to say that, and they really appreciate it. So that's something about personal brand that's really elevated our business. The second thing is hiring and capacity. So we've discussed this as well. You know, you have to invest to get that return. And I remember my business partner going, okay, we're going to hire 3 people. And I was like, we can't afford 3 people. And he's like, but we will. You know, hire them and we will. And I was like, I can't. It really stressed me out, but he's so chilled and he's got such a business mindset. He's like, well, you know, we had funds, so like, you know, bank account, personal stuff that we could add to, you know, we had a buffer. But I was quite scared to take that leap. And sometimes you've got to take a calculated risk, and you've got to spend money to make money. And since we hired staff to free up my time, I've been able to really focus on the content and focus on the social media plan across all platforms. And now we've hired someone on marketing full time. So they're going to completely revolutionize our social media platforms, because we used to do one content fits all. So we used to do, you know, the same on Facebook as Instagram, as LinkedIn. And now we're realizing that the content body can be the same, but it's got to be, you know, Instagram's very visual. So you've got to create really actual, you know, capturing visual headline and a visual kind of something that catches your eye. Whereas, you know, the Facebook groups can be more like journal based, where they can just be writing. You don't have to be a picture there. You can get double the engagement. You can get just as much engagement from text than from a picture. So it's understanding the different platforms and understanding how to maximize those platforms to get the best return. And capacity has allowed us to do that even more so. And I'm leading everyone who's doing that. Do you want to? I've got 4 tips, but do you want me to? Do you want to ask me some questions, or do you want me to go through all of them?
No, you go ahead and give your 4 tips. Go ahead. Love to hear them.
So the third thing that I think is really, really important is repurposing and reusing content. So like I was saying before, what we do is so let's say, for example, the text about a builder, right? So I might tell a story in the groups to engage and make people really relate to it. Then in Instagram, I might say things not to do with a builder, or how to get the best builder, or tips for things you should not do with builders, or something capitalizing, something to get your attention and giving value. So people go, oh, what's that? And they'll swipe through. LinkedIn can be very similar. It can be either. It can have a picture, but it can have that body of text. And it's understanding, YouTube's very different. Again, YouTube, you might need some separate content. You might need to do a video of the content in a different format. And that's it. It's understanding that. But I don't think you need to do different content for each platform. I just think you need to repurpose. And Gary V's he's really good. He's got a slide deck of how you do a Twitter post, and then you copy that image, and then you put it on Instagram, and then you redo, and you just repurpose things in a certain way, because you don't you should think about, how can I maximize my time? If I'm creating brand new content for each platform, is that the best use of my time, or can I repurpose it and then gain more time to then do more content, or to do separate stuff on maybe YouTube, or to do other things? So it's about understanding where best to spend your time and how to be the absolute most efficient for each individual platform, and understanding those different mediums as well. And lastly, this is absolutely crucial. It's understanding your target market. So we did personality profiles of our clients, and we spent a whole day mapping out, where would our clients reside? What types of clients are there? Is there investors in the UK? Is there investors in Dubai? Is there investors in other cities, in other countries? Where do they hang out? What do they like? What types of personality are they? Do they use tech? Are they going to find ads in newspapers? Where will they hang out? And figuring out that as through research as well, and researching it and really digging deep on your target market and what they want and what kind of content would they want to see. What things can I provide that will resonate with them, that will allow them to contact me. So understanding that target market, amidst with all the other points, really touches home, and it's the hook that brings the clients in to speak to you. And like I said, it could be 6 months in, it could be a year in. It's not overnight, but it's that consistency that brings in that specific person that you're looking for. But obviously, it takes a lot of time and effort to do that.
It does take a lot of time and effort, and I've been at this as well for some time, and I think it's amazing how many people don't do it. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I really only posted on Facebook, and they were usually just pictures of my cats or my kids, or the odd random networking meeting that I've been to. But since we're in the same group, aren't we, right? So since we started on that group, I went to it, and it was like, well, I only joined this group because I had a book that I wanted to get out. But suddenly I'm seeing wait a minute, everybody's doing this podcasting thing. What's this podcasting thing all about? And then I saw, wait a minute, everybody's there on all these platforms, and they're doing all this stuff. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to have to up my game. And I noticed that when I did up my game on social media, I've kind of gone beyond that, because I don't just use social media now. I'm really big on kind of marketing automation and Facebook ads and all of that kind of thing. So I kind of wanted to take it to another level. Yeah. But the thing about even if you do all the stuff of taking it to the next level and bringing in the automation and so on, people will always check you out on social media these days. So if you do put the effort in, as you said, and if you're consistent, and even if you just only spend 20 minutes a day or something like that, that consistency makes a big difference in terms of how people react to you and the value that they put on you. I think that's the important thing, that they actually respect you more. I think if you maintain a quality social media presence, I think they do. Yeah, that's been my experience anyway. Have you found that as well, Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like I say, I think it's because you can easily spend loads of time on things that aren't even either engaging or you're not even targeting the right people. I remember at the beginning I was giving advice on my business on my business model. So I was just appealing to other people who had businesses like me. That's not who I wanted to target, So I was like, well, why am I doing this then? And it made me really think about, what is the content? What is it? And how can I multi-purpose it as much as possible? But it's interesting that, I'd say 90% of our business is from social media, and that's insane. Absolutely.
It really
insane.
is. It really is.
It's the way most businesses are going at the moment, It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And it takes time to really understand the metrics involved for each platform, because they're all unique in every way, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think particularly in property, that the whole social media thing is so big. It really is, because people have such a kind of thirst for learning, because I think just those little kind of tips that somebody that's more experienced than you actually has, that little nugget, can make all the difference between you making a very costly mistake and making an extremely smart move that is going to make you a lot of money, generate a lot of money for you in the future. So you never stop learning, do you, in property?
No, that's a really interesting thing that you said, because we've just done a podcast on that. So one of our investors and friends, he's allowed me to mention it online, made some costly mistakes. We found them a property and they wanted to manage it themselves, and they wanted to project manage it themselves. And it was a loft conversion, and it wasn't to building regs, but this investor didn't know, and he thought it was a bedroom. And then when it came down to it, he realised, I'm going to need building control approval, because what someone at the network told him. A bit too late, because he'd already plastered and doors had been fitted. But building control came round and said, no, they need to be fire doors. You need to box this off for fire protection. You were looking at an extra $4 or $5 grand in extra costs, including, he'd already paid for plastering and already paid for doors, and they had to be replaced with like £500 doors. And then not just that, he didn't do due diligence on an electrician, similar to us and the builder, and shoddy workmanship, and it didn't get signed off, and he had to get another electrician in, and all these are causing delays as well. And then another thing was the electrician, because he was reliable, he didn't turn up, so they got the plasterers in first, and then he realised he had sockets in places that he wanted. So they had to chase the wall, which cost extra plastering costs. And I just said, you should have, joined with a company or utilised their services, or, join with a network and put yourself out there and build your team and find people that are 2 years, 3 years ahead of you and learn from them, get them to come around with you. And, that's what all this kind of social media, this building your presence and building your network is all about, because it saves you those costly mistakes.
Exactly. Exactly. But you have to be careful who you listen to, don't you? And that is also the thing about social media, is that you can't believe everything you say, and that sometimes people will give you the wrong advice. So that's where the trust comes in, isn't it? That you have to, through social media, you have to, or whether they do come from social media or elsewhere, but you have to find your trusted inner circle, don't you? Absolutely. And for example, I would never take any advice on anybody about property development. There are probably about 3 people that I know that I would listen to, and all of them have been in property development for 30 years or more. I would not listen to anybody that had not been, in property development through recessions. Yeah. Not really. Not if I was, going to be spending millions of pounds. I mean, no.
No, you do right.
Yeah. Yeah. So your architectural background, Daniel, that must have come in invaluable, I would have thought, in terms of actually being able to assess the potential of properties. Do you use it very much in your
absolutely.
work?
Really, it's been so useful. I mean, just because property is it's a finite resource. There's not at the moment, especially, there's not enough properties on the market, and the demand is so high. And we look very creatively to strategies. So we're doing a lot of conversions at the moment, flats, 1 to 2 beds, two-bed houses to three-bed houses, and utilizing space in a very creative way. And that's the thing that my job every day was to visualize. And a lot of clients would say, well, I just can't imagine it. And I could imagine it. And that's where, we'd had to do CGIs and visuals to kind of encapsulate that vision. But I can go in a property and go, yeah, bang, 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 I know exactly what to do. And that skill has really allowed us to see properties that not a lot of other people can see, see value where not a lot of people can see. And also understanding what you can and can't do, building regulations, planning guidance, permitted development, and understanding, the process. We worked on some big construction sites, working with contractors and stuff like that. So, I could transfer a really large amount of skill sets to property, which was really, really useful. And it's, taken us to this position, really.
Yeah. So are you going to be doing, or do you do any larger developments, or are you mostly just focusing on smaller properties right now?
We don't want to grow too big too soon. So we just do at the moment, we're doing a HMO, house of multiple occupancy. It's a social housing HMO with a housing group. And we do pretty much buy-to-lets. But the buy-to-lets we do are quite unique. They've got quite a good spec and they're pretty cool houses. But we're not getting into developments yet. It's something that we want to get into. But our long-term vision is we want to change the housing sector. We want to absolutely revolutionize the way houses are built. I mean, I worked for a lot of house builders, and their small plots, their vision of community is just putting a green patch in the middle of a plot, and the houses and the bedrooms are tiny. And I'm just like, I want to be able to do new builds and revolutionize the way house builders build properties. I want to create really community-led focuses and create that culture, like I was saying in the business, create that culture where it's a different way of living. That's my long-term vision.
I love that. I love that. Well, Daniel, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast tonight. Really, really enjoyed talking to you. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing.
Oh, thank you. No, thanks for having me.
I'll look forward to seeing all your work and following you on social media. And it's just been great to know that I now have a fantastic contact as well up in Newcastle. So thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.